Inside Virginia prison system, hidden truths you never knew. For most people, prison exists as a distant idea. A place hidden behind concrete walls and steel fences. A place discussed in courtrooms, reported in news headlines, and portrayed in movies. But inside Virginia's prison system, reality is very different. Behind these walls, thousands of men live according to rules that most Americans never see. Rules that can determine whether an inmate serves his sentence peacefully or spends years navigating danger, fear, and uncertainty. Every prison has its official regulations. But there are also hidden systems. Invisible hierarchies. Unspoken expectations. And daily struggles that rarely make it beyond the prison gates. Some inmates enter expecting punishment. What they find instead is an entirely different world. A world with its own economy. Its own culture. Its own methods of survival. And some of the truths hidden inside Virginia's prisons may surprise you. Before we continue, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Because today we're stepping beyond the headlines and into one of America's most complex prison systems. And as you'll soon discover, what happens inside these institutions often remains hidden from public view. Entering a different world. The journey into Virginia's prison system begins long before an inmate reaches a housing unit. For many prisoners, the first hours inside are among the most stressful of their lives. The uncertainty is overwhelming. They know they are entering a controlled environment. But they have no idea what daily life will actually look like. Questions race through their minds. Who will they live with? Will they be safe? How do they avoid trouble? What mistakes could place a target on their backs? These concerns are not imaginary. For someone entering prison for the first time, every detail suddenly matters. The intake process begins with identification, medical evaluations, security assessments, and classification reviews. Officials examine criminal histories, behavioral records, prior incarcerations, gang affiliations, and security risks. Based on these findings, inmates are assigned to facilities considered appropriate for their custody level. But prison life cannot be understood through paperwork alone. Two inmates with similar classifications may have completely different experiences. One may complete his sentence with few problems. Another may find himself constantly navigating conflicts. The difference often depends on something that cannot easily be measured. The prison culture itself. And that culture begins revealing itself almost immediately. The first lesson every inmate learns. The first lesson many inmates learn is simple. Prison has two sets of rules. The official rules. And the inmate rules. One is written. The other is not. Correctional officers enforce institutional regulations. But inmates often enforce social expectations. New arrivals quickly discover that reputation matters. People pay attention. They observe behavior. They evaluate confidence. They notice weakness. And they remember mistakes. Inside prison, first impressions can carry consequences long after they are made. An inmate who talks too much may attract unwanted attention. An inmate who interferes in other people's affairs may create enemies. An inmate who disrespects another prisoner, even unintentionally, may find himself facing problems he never expected. This does not mean violence is inevitable. In fact, many prisoners actively avoid confrontation. The majority simply want to complete their sentences and return home. But survival often requires understanding the environment. Knowing when to speak. Knowing when to remain silent. Knowing who to trust. And perhaps most importantly, knowing who not to trust. Because what appears friendly on the surface is not always what it seems. And nowhere is that reality clearer than inside the prison housing units. Life inside the cell block. For many inmates, the housing unit becomes the center of daily life. This is where they sleep. Eat snacks purchased from commissary. Watch television. Read books. Write letters. And spend countless hours waiting. Waiting is one of the defining features of prison life. Waiting for meals. Waiting for recreation. Waiting for visitation. Waiting for release dates that may still be years away. A typical day begins early. Lights come on. Counts are conducted. Breakfast is served. Work assignments begin. Some inmates report to prison jobs. Others attend educational programs. Some remain inside housing units due to security restrictions or classification requirements. The routines can become repetitive. Day after day. Month after month. Year after year. For some prisoners, the predictability becomes comforting. For others, it becomes mentally exhausting. The constant repetition creates a unique psychological challenge. One former inmate described it as living the same day hundreds of times. Another compared it to watching life move forward while remaining frozen in place. And as the years pass, many inmates begin confronting a different kind of struggle. One that cannot be seen from outside the walls. The hidden psychological battle. The public often focuses on prison's physical restrictions. The fences, the locks, the razor wire. But many former inmates say the greatest challenge is psychological. Prison removes freedom, but it also removes control. Simple decisions become limited. When to eat, where to go, when to leave. Most choices are made by the institution. Over time, this environment can affect how people think, how they interact, how they view themselves. For inmates serving long sentences, maintaining hope becomes critically important. Many develop routines to protect their mental health. Reading, exercising, studying, writing letters, practicing religion, learning skills. Anything that creates purpose. Without purpose, time can become overwhelming. Especially for inmates facing decades behind bars. And for some prisoners, the challenge becomes even greater when isolation enters the picture. What happens inside Virginia's most restrictive housing units reveals a side of prison life few people ever see. The reality of segregation. Among the most controversial aspects of modern corrections is segregation housing. These units are designed to separate certain inmates from the general prison population. Reasons vary. Some inmates present serious security risks. Others require protection. Some are placed there following disciplinary violations. Life inside segregation differs dramatically from life in the general population. Movement is heavily restricted. Human interaction becomes limited. The environment is quieter, more controlled, and often far more isolating. Supporters argue that segregation can improve institutional safety. Critics argue that prolonged isolation may create significant psychological effects. Regardless of where one stands in the debate, there is little disagreement about one thing. Isolation changes people. Days become difficult to distinguish from one another. Time moves differently. And many inmates describe the experience as one of the most challenging aspects of incarceration. Yet even segregation is only one part of a much larger system. Because beyond the cells and security procedures lies another hidden reality. An economy operating inside prison walls. And that underground system influences far more than most people realize. The underground economy. Every prison operates on an official economy. But many prisons also develop an unofficial one. Inside Virginia's correctional facilities, commissary items often become far more valuable than they appear. To someone outside prison, a packet of coffee or a bag of instant noodles might seem insignificant. Inside prison, those same items can function almost like currency. Inmates purchase approved products through commissary accounts funded by family members, friends, or wages earned through prison jobs. For those with financial support, commissary can provide small comforts. For others, access is limited. That difference creates value. And wherever value exists, trade follows. A packet of coffee may be exchanged for a favor. A snack may settle a small debt. Personal hygiene products can become highly sought-after commodities. Most of these exchanges are relatively harmless. But unofficial economies have a way of expanding. And as they grow, problems often follow. Because not every debt is easily forgotten. Not every agreement ends peacefully. And not every transaction stays within the rules. For experienced inmates, one principle remains critical. Never owe more than you can repay. Behind prison walls, unpaid debts can quickly become dangerous. And some debts involve far more than commissary items. Contraband, the constant battle. No prison system in the world has completely eliminated contraband. Virginia's prisons are no exception. Contraband can take many forms. Unauthorized cell phones, illegal drugs, homemade weapons, restricted electronics, or items altered for prohibited purposes. The battle against contraband never truly ends. Correctional officers conduct searches. Mail is inspected. Visitation procedures are monitored. Security systems continue evolving. Yet individuals constantly look for new methods to bypass restrictions. The reason is simple. Contraband often represents power. A cell phone can provide communication. Drugs can generate profit. Weapons can offer protection or create threats. As a result, entire networks sometimes emerge around acquiring, distributing, and concealing prohibited items. For prison administrators, contraband presents one of the most persistent security challenges. A single prohibited item can trigger investigations, disciplinary actions, housing transfers, and sometimes violence. The public often imagines dramatic prison riots beginning without warning. But many major incidents start with smaller issues. An unpaid debt, a stolen item, a dispute over contraband, a conflict that slowly escalates until it reaches a breaking point. And when tensions rise, another hidden force often comes into focus. The prison hierarchy. The unseen power structures. Officially, prison authority belongs to the institution. Wardens establish policies. Staff enforce regulations. Security procedures govern daily operations. But among inmates, another system often develops: an informal hierarchy. Not every prison operates the same way. Not every inmate group functions identically. But influence exists in nearly every correctional environment. Some individuals gain respect because of experience. Others because of personality. Some because they have spent decades navigating prison life. Certain inmates become unofficial problem solvers. They help reduce tensions. They mediate disputes. They encourage stability. Others seek influence through intimidation, through fear, through control. Understanding these dynamics can be crucial for survival. New inmates who fail to recognize prison politics sometimes find themselves caught between conflicts they never intended to join. Those who understand the environment often learn to avoid unnecessary attention. The reality is more complex than television portrayals. Prison is rarely divided into simple categories of good and bad. Most inmates spend their time trying to avoid trouble altogether. Because everyone understands one truth: conflict brings consequences. And those consequences often extend far beyond the individuals directly involved. The men and women who work inside. When people discuss prisons, attention usually focuses on inmates. But thousands of correctional employees enter these facilities every day. For them, prison is not a temporary experience. It is their workplace. Correctional officers operate in one of the most demanding environments in public service. Their responsibilities extend far beyond locking doors. They supervise inmate movement, conduct searches, respond to emergencies, prevent violence, enforce rules, and maintain order inside highly complex institutions. The work requires constant awareness. Officers must identify potential conflicts before they escalate, recognize changes in inmate behavior, monitor security threats, and make decisions under pressure. Most shifts pass without major incidents. But uncertainty is always present. A routine day can change quickly. A verbal disagreement can become physical. A medical emergency can occur without warning. A security threat can emerge from seemingly ordinary circumstances. The job demands patience, professionalism, and vigilance. And despite technological advances, one reality remains unchanged. Much of prison safety depends on human judgment. The ability to recognize danger before it fully develops. Because once serious violence begins, stopping it becomes far more difficult. When violence erupts, most prison days are routine. Meals are served. Programs operate. Work assignments continue. Counts are completed. But occasionally, that routine breaks. Violence remains one of the most serious realities of incarceration. The causes vary. Personal disputes, gang conflicts, retaliation, contraband-related issues, long-standing grievances. Sometimes the triggers appear minor. But inside prison, circumstances can amplify tensions in ways outsiders rarely understand. When violence occurs, institutional responses are immediate. Movement stops. Investigations begin. Housing units may be restricted. Security measures increase. The goal is always the same: restore order, protect lives, prevent further incidents. Yet every major event leaves an impact. Not only on those directly involved, but on entire prison populations. Rumors spread. Anxiety increases. Tensions rise. And everyone waits to see what happens next. Because prison is a world where information travels quickly, sometimes faster than facts. And uncertainty often becomes its own source of stress. But even violence is not the hidden truth that surprises many former inmates most. The greatest surprise often comes much later, after release. When prison itself is no longer the challenge. The hardest sentence. For some inmates, prison is measured in months. For others, years. But for those serving life sentences, time becomes something entirely different. Birthdays pass. Children become adults. Parents grow old. Loved ones die. And the outside world continues moving forward without them. Many long-term inmates eventually adapt to prison life. Not because it becomes easy, but because it becomes familiar. The routines become normal. The walls become permanent. And for some, the thought of returning to society after decades can feel almost as frightening as incarceration itself. Because while prison changes daily life, it also changes people. And that leads to one of the biggest hidden truths about incarceration: life after release. Many people believe freedom begins the moment an inmate leaves prison. But for countless former prisoners, a different challenge is just beginning. Finding employment, rebuilding relationships, adjusting to technology, learning to make decisions independently again. These obstacles can be overwhelming. Some former inmates describe feeling like strangers in their own communities. The world they left behind may no longer exist. Friends have moved on. Neighborhoods have changed. Entire technologies have appeared during their incarceration. Freedom returns. But rebuilding a life takes time. And success often depends on support, opportunity, and personal determination. Virginia's prison system is more than concrete walls, steel bars, and security fences. It is a world shaped by routines, rules, consequences, and human choices. A place where some seek redemption. Others struggle to survive. And many spend years confronting the consequences of decisions made long ago. Behind every prison number is a human story. Some tragic. Some complicated. Some unfinished. And while most people will never see life inside these walls, understanding what happens there offers a rare glimpse into a hidden world that exists just beyond public view. Because prison is not only about punishment. It is also about time. And for those living behind these walls, time is often the one thing they can never get back. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary insightful, subscribe for more in-depth stories. And until next time, stay informed.